This is David Carr of the WordPress for Toastmasters project with a demo of a new and more interactive digital agenda that is going to make it easier than ever for your members to sign up for a role or suggest a role for another member, easier for them to take themselves off the agenda if they can't make it, but most of all for club leaders also to organize their agenda, set up the standard template for their weekly meetings, and then vary it as necessary based on the circumstances of an individual meeting. So this is an agenda that's set up to run from 7 p.m. with the meeting ending at 8:15. We have our different activities timed out, and I showed you I can go in here and sign up for a role. I can remove myself from a role. If I want to speak, I can click to add myself to the agenda, select my path, level, and project, and put in my details. And when I do that, actually it shows me that I'm running a little bit over budget. This was only a 4-minute speech that I selected, but it turns out that if I go into the agenda editor, I'll see that some other speakers have booked some longer speech projects. So this is where I can go in as the meeting organizer, the Toastmaster of the day, the VP of Education, and I can assign other people's roles. I can put in my theme and word of the day, elements like that. And I can see the details of other people's speeches, so that I see that Abraham Lincoln is doing Reflect on Your Path, which is a somewhat longer pathway speech. And we have another person who has a little bit longer one in here. I could handle this a couple of different ways. I could take somebody off the agenda and say you just can't do that, or I can allow additional time on the agenda. So you as the club leader can decide which strategy you want to use. By the way, this is being offered initially as an alternative version of the agenda sign up. So I have it live on the Online Presenters Toastmasters website. So this is the default experience over there. But most people on Toastmost or using the open source version of the software right now would see a little prompt to try the new sign up form. So you can click here to kind of turn this on, and you'll get the additional levels of interactivity. And then if you, as the club website administrator, decide that you want to make this standard for everybody, you go into this screen called Template and Settings, and you would toggle this on to be used by default. You might want to try it first because it is new, and I have been working out the kinks, but it's going to be great. So let me slow down and go through these things in a little bit more detail. I just mentioned that we have a scenario where we have some people giving longer speeches. And so as of right now, our meeting is likely to run over time. And if we have a tight schedule, maybe people have to go to work after the meeting, or they don't want to stay up all that late, we want to try and keep our meetings on time. So I have a tab here called Organize. Now this is where we can make adjustments to the setup of our meeting. These are functions that previously I've been asking people to go into the WordPress editor to do. And there are advantages of doing it that way. Let me just show you by contrast. So this is all the different structural elements of our meetings, our roles as well as other elements are loaded into the WordPress editor. And if I click on a specific role over in the sidebar, I would see some options that I have. And the advantage of doing it this way is you're using the same editor that you would use to edit a blog post. Now I love the WordPress blog editor and web page editor. I love the way it allows me to embed interactive elements such as video and to format things. But although this worked, a lot of people found it a bit intimidating and maybe more complicated than they wanted it to be. For one thing, when you're going to, say, add another role to the agenda or a note to the agenda about what's going on, if you click the Insert button, you see all these prompts to add elements that are more like blog or web page layout elements. They're things that aren't relevant to the Toastmasters experience, and you have to kind of fish down in here to find the things that you want that would be more relevant to running a Toastmasters. In this newish version, I'm able to provide exactly just the elements that we want to work with. And if I want to insert a new role, so say we're going to start to have a humorist at our meeting, I can insert that here. I can say that this is going to be a custom role. It's not one of the standard Toastmasters roles. A lot of clubs have a humorist, but some of them call it something different. So whatever you call it, you can put it on the agenda. Typically, you're probably only going to have one humorist, whereas for speakers and evaluators, typically you have 2 or 3. And we'll give this person 5 minutes on the agenda. If we scroll down to look, we'll see that our meeting is going to go a little bit longer. Maybe that's okay. But I mentioned that we have some speeches with extra time being requested for them. So here's my notice that this is running to 33 minutes. So maybe we do need to allow extra time for that. And if we're going to allow extra time for speaking, maybe we want to take it away from someplace else. So we can go to table topics. So this club is set up to do table topics and then take a break and come back for the speeches. So we'll just ratchet this down to 17 minutes, or maybe we should make it 15 minutes. Let's see, what would that bring us to? So now our meeting is ending a little bit late. We really wanted to keep to that end time. We couldn't go down to 12 minutes. And so now we're back to having a meeting that's going to end at 8:15. And it's great that as you make these adjustments, you can see the impact of them on your overall speaking schedule. Now, you might also decide that because you might have some speakers actually run over, they're giving longer speeches to begin with, maybe we want to move table topics to the end so that it can kind of soak up time available and we can shorten it if we need to. So instead of doing table topics before speeches, we can decide that it should be after speeches. And we do have the ability to do drag and drop within here. So I need to find where the speakers are. I'll try and drop it right there. And let's see if that worked. I overshot a little bit. Sometimes I find it easier to use these little up-down buttons to get things in the right spot. So now we should have okay, now we have speakers and then topics master. If we wanted to have our break after speakers and before table topics, we would move that down. All right. So what I'm trying to show you is you have a lot of tools available here for rearranging your agenda. Also, from here we can also make some of those adjustments, like removing. I can remove myself. I could move these around. And often you get into this situation where you've had several people sign up, but you might have a gap in the agenda because speaker 2 withdrew. So this is a little close gap icon. So I click there, and it will just close things up so that we don't have a gap in the middle of our agenda. It's clear who is speaker number 1, number 2, number 3. If we know that George Washington needs to leave early from this meeting, we can move him up to speaker 1 by clicking here. So these buttons are move to top, move up 1, move down 1, and then that close icon appears if there are gaps in the agenda. So lots of tools for moving things around. Also, one of the things I skipped over was the suggest mode. Now, some of the clubs that use the software have found this to be quite productive as a way of nudging people to take a role. So we're not just assigning them to it without finding out whether they are actually available. But if we don't have a humorist, and I think somebody would be great for that, I can go in here and pick somebody off the list. And notice that on the drop-down list, it says when they last did that role. So we can say, you haven't done this lately. And we can fix our spelling. And I can send myself a copy if I want, but the basic thing is just click the button that says send suggestion. We get a little preview of what they're going to get by email. It's my message up top. I'm nominating you for a role. You haven't done this lately. To confirm, click here. And there's a note that says that no password is required when they do it that way. We're trying to make it as easy as possible. You know, we know who they are pretty well because they're the person who is at that email address. They've received this message. Make it easy for them to say yes and sign up. The role is not reserved for them on the agenda at that point. So if somebody else took the role in the meantime, they'll be offered the chance to take a different role. But you know, we're trying to nudge them to sign up. Now there are a bunch of other features in the system that have been in the system for a while, where you can email out the whole agenda. And actually in this version too, there are these little one-click sign-up links where when people get that email, they can click to sign up, and that also doesn't require a password. So this is a lot of power. Now, I showed you some things about how you can reorganize and restructure your agenda. You can do that for an individual meeting. If you do it for a particular meeting and you decide, hey, actually, this is what we want to do going forward. If you're the administrator, you can go into this template and settings screen, and you can just update the template based on the changes you've just made. So I do update template, and it gives me a little prompt to create and update other events based on the schedule and the setup that we've just set up. And so we can go through here. It's warning me that certain ones were modified independently, which is just the experiments I've just been doing. And if that all looks good, we can say add update from template, and these all will be updated as a batch. Alternatively, you could go in from here and open the template as the document that you're working with, as opposed to the individual meeting date. And now I can make changes without affecting my current and upcoming meetings. I can experiment with how I want to organize the event. I can do the same things in terms of moving things around. So when I'm in the mode of editing the template, as soon as I've saved it and I'm ready, I can go back to that create update function that's shown here. Now we can determine how many of these functions are available to all members as opposed to just a couple. If we turn off both of these options, then a regular member will only see the sign up mode and they'll see the suggest mode. They won't see edit and they won't see organize. if we make these features available to everyone, which really is what I suggest, is we're empowering all our members to help out. So that if you have some experienced members, they might not necessarily be a VP of education, but they help out with the club. They help assign other members to roles. We don't want to put too many obstacles in their way necessarily. It is true that behind the scenes, when you allow people to reorganize the agenda, you're actually rewriting content on the back end of WordPress. There are some security precautions I put in place to make sure that nobody can use this to, say, mess up your homepage. It will only work with agenda template content. But I encourage you to check this out, to give me feedback on it. It is the beta version right now, but I do anticipate that this is going to become the standard version, and I want to incorporate this into the process of training people. I do think it'll be an easier process than people having to go into the WordPress editor whenever they want to restructure their agenda. Check it out.